Support for Carolina Business Review made possible by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries, headquartered in Hartsville since 1899. And by Business North Carolina Magazine. There's a place for those who subscribe to the theory that business doesn't have to be boring.
These continue to be economically trying times. The stock market has recently recorded the worst performance since September 2008. Most economists continue to predict a long, slow recovery with no return to the economic successes of the late 20th century. Talk of a double-dip recession has resurfaced. How does this macroeconomic quagmire affect our local municipalities? Hi, I'm Lori Eberhardt, standing in for Chris William. Welcome to Carolina Business Review, the Carolina's source for business and public policy. Today, we're fortunate to host 3 leading mayors in our region, local leaders who recognize the challenges facing today's government. Together, we will discuss how mayors view economic development while balancing the needs for municipal services and dealing with continuously shrinking budgets.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle-market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. And by Novant HEALTH, a not-for-profit group of hospitals and physician clinics, ranked as one of our nation's 10 best healthcare systems, caring for patients and communities in North and South Carolina. Major funding also by King & Spalding, an international law firm with over 800 lawyers in 13 offices worldwide, providing legal services to clients in the Carolinas and throughout the world. For more information, visit www.kslaw.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review was recorded August 5th, 2011. On this week's program, Mayor Anthony Fox of Charlotte, Mayor Alan Joynes of Winston-Salem, and Mayor Terrence Roberts of Anderson. Now, Lori Eberhardt.
Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank
Mayor
you.
Fox, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Glad to be
Mayor
here.
Joynes, it's a pleasure. And Mayor Roberts.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. As discussed in the opening comments, the economic news has not been good from the national and actually from the world standpoint. Europe is a real disarray with a lot of their debt problems over there. But it seems to affect the economy in the United States, and there's talks once again about a double-dip recession. And the first thing I'd like to ask you is, from a mayor's governing standpoint of your municipality, how does the overall macroeconomic news affect your ability to govern? Mayor Fox.
Well, first of all, the job that I have and the mayors all across our state and country have is to point a way out. We're at the local level. We have issues that are on the ground issues. When someone loses their home, they're out on the streets of Charlotte, for example. When we have challenges with unemployment, they impact us from the standpoint of our revenue levels through the sales tax. And obviously with property taxes, it adds an obligation that families have to meet, even though they may not have jobs. So we see these problems on the ground. I think from my vantage point, although there are some headwinds in the economy, clearly I think Congress inflicted some self-inflicted wounds by not dealing with the debt ceiling issue in a methodical way and waiting till the 11th hour. We've got to get Washington focused on the medium and long-term fiscal health of the country, and I think that will do a lot to settle things down.
Sounds great. Mayor Joynes?
I certainly agree with Mayor Fox. Winston-Salem's had to reinvent itself. We're an old manufacturing city that's had to reinvent ourselves to a knowledge-based economy, and in doing so, we are now competing on a global basis, particularly for our biotech jobs, where we have sister city relationships in Shanghai and other places like that are doing the same things that we are. Just last week, we saw how we are so intricately linked. We are a AAA credit-rated city. All 3 of the major credit rating agencies rank our debt as AAA because the U.S. was potentially tinkering on the brink of downgrading their debt. We got linked to that somehow or another, and we got a little warning from Moody's saying we're taking a look. And we thought, whoa, that didn't make any sense at all because of what we're doing. But it brought it home very quickly that local governments are also impacted by what's going on in Washington, clearly.
How about you, Mayor Roberts?
About the same thing. You know, we're on the ground floor of everything that's coming down from federal and state government, and so we see the issues firsthand. We see issues of homelessness, families being pulled apart, and as mayors, I think on our end, we have to be responsible for being that positive voice that comes out and said, you know, that we can do it, and as a community we can do it. And so it's up to us to convince people in our communities that, in my opinion, that we have to take control of our own destiny, and people in our community have to do the heavy lifting to help people.
And basically be providing leadership for that community to solve its own problems.
Exactly. We're our chief cheerleaders of our community.
You got it.
That's great. So from an economic development standpoint, I'll just stay with you, Mayor Roberts, what do you view as the role of a mayor in economic development and helping that region?
Well, I think one of the things that I've seen over the years is that cities are somewhat handicapped when it comes to economic development. We sometimes have to reinvent ourselves, but when companies come in and businesses come in, they want to meet mayors. You know, a lot of times county councils and chairmen, but they want to identify with the mayor. So part of my job is to make sure that I try to be at everything that I can, be at the table to show that from a city's point of view, I think the quality of life issues are what we're responsible for. Our downtown areas, education, housing, I think those are important things in economic development.
That's great. From the city reinventing itself, Mayor Joines, you mentioned Winston-Salem was very successful in going from really a tobacco-based economy into a biotech economy.
Right.
How did that happen?
It was a 20-year overnight success. Now, I think one of the roles a mayor's got to have is to try to create the vision for that community and then to articulate that vision on a regular basis. It can't chase every new rabbit that comes along. So we began looking at how we needed to rebuild the economy probably 10 years ago and focused in on 7 sectors that we thought we could be successful out of. Brought in some consultants to help us think through that based on our own structural strengths, if you will. And we stayed focused on financial services, biotech, medicine, design, logistics, travel and tourism, and then something I call just keeping our corporate headquarters happy and growing there. So a mayor creates that vision, articulates the vision, and then sells that vision to his citizens as well as to the outside world. And I certainly agree with Mayor Roberts that people coming into your city want to look the mayor in the eye and feel good about that community. It's going to be some stability in that government. The tax rates are going to be stable, and we're going to deliver on what we say we're going to do.
That's great. Mayor Fox?
Yeah, well, Mayor Joines spoke about it very eloquently. I think Charlotte, 2 or 3 years ago, people wouldn't have anticipated that we would still see positive job growth in Charlotte based on the acquisition of Wells Fargo, Wachovia by Wells Fargo, and other activities. But we have, and the way we've done it is by working together with our private sector partners like the Chamber of Commerce and the Regional Partnership and others to drive 12,000 new private sector jobs into Charlotte over the last couple of years. And to focus on the sectors, Alan just talked about the strategic process they did in Winston-Salem. We've done a similar process here. And so we see financial services, healthcare, higher education, and several other sectors being very critical to the future of our city, and we're starting to see growth there. Let me say one other thing. 90% of the jobs in Charlotte are small business jobs. And one of the really big opportunities I think all of us have is to create an infrastructure to support entrepreneurship and small business growth in our communities. And we are working harder at that over the last 2 years than I think we've ever done.
That's great.
No.
It segues into a topic that we had to talk about for its infrastructure is really water rights in our region. Right now we've got a dispute between North Carolina and South Carolina over the water rights to the Catawba River, and it kind of reminds me of a Mad Max scenario. I mean, here we are almost Mad Max arguing over water, but it's a reality. It's happening. So how does the ability to provide the infrastructure, particularly water, if you run out of water, you don't exist, how does that affect economic development and governing?
Well, it's a resource that we can't really make more of. And I think we're seeing that challenge not only in the Catawba region, but if you go up the river basin up some, you're seeing that same challenge happen. I would rather be North and South Carolina than to be somewhere on the West Coast or even down in Atlanta, where they've had some very, very challenging issues with resources. But I think ultimately the courts will sort of lay it all out. But in terms of I think our biggest challenge is going to be population growth over the next 25 years, which is going to further strain these resources. And one of the things we've got to do as two states, I think, is to tighten our building codes up and to tighten up the usage of water so that we can accommodate that population growth.
That's great. Other thoughts?
Mayor Fox is right on target there. In the next 20 years, it's projected North Carolina will grow by about 3 million people. It's almost like taking the whole state of South Carolina and just dumping it over in North Carolina. So we've got to be able to provide those resources. In Winston, we've been fortunate that some of our leaders in the past worked out an arrangement with that built 30 extra feet on the Kerscott Reservoir up in Wilkes County. So we own that top 30 feet of that reservoir. It's about 11 billion gallons of water that we can call to be released at any time if the Yadkin flow gets down. And in those 40 years it's been there, we've never had to do it, thank goodness. But we came very close about 3 years ago in the height of the drought. But having that ability to say to a business or to others that we can provide you the water, don't worry about it. We've got the treatment capacity and we've got the raw water capacity. So it's very, very important to cities and regions' ability to grow.
Mayor Roberts?
I agree. We're on the other end of we're on the Atlanta side of it, and so and water is the new oil, and we've got to understand that and recognize that. But I think probably from an economic development point of view, we have a success story that recently came to light just because of water, and that was the first quality plant maker of tissue, and they were attracted to us because of Lake Hartwell. And the quality of the water. And so what we've recognized is that, we've got to build capacity. We've got to be able to provide water for future growth. We think we position ourselves over the next 20 years to do that, but using raw water as economic development. And so the thing that the first quality folks were surprised is the quality of the water, and that they didn't have to turn it over as much as they had to. And so it spurred other economic development talk in that one sector for us.
That's great. Great success story. Switching gears a little bit and just talking about the availability of municipal services. In all your opening comments, you mentioned when the economy's down, homelessness increases, you have a better need for services or an increased need for services. How do you balance that and address those issues?
It's almost a two-edged sword.
Right.
Revenue's going down and the need for services going up.
Correct.
Fortunately, we've undergone over the past probably 11 years something we call operations review every year in our budget, where we look at ways to better provide the service as efficient as you can. And we've had to cut back a little bit on the level of service in some cases just to stay within our revenues. But our city manager and his staff has done a great job of finding those ways to tighten up and still not really impact the revenues. We were able to balance our budget this year with no tax increase, no fee increases, and no decrease in service. So I just really attribute that to the hard work of our city employees and willing to step out. And we haven't given a pay increase for 3 years. We've asked them to do more, and they have. And so it's really refreshing to me to see that quality.
That's great. Mayor Fox, you mentioned looking at the providing municipal services through a lot of public-private partnerships and mentioned the Charlotte Chamber. Can you give an example of that?
Well, one good example in Charlotte City government is our recycling program. Back in a couple of years ago, we were talking about expanding capacity. What we've done is we've gone with larger bins in our city that are able to take about 5 to 6 times more recycling than before. We've reduced the number of collections, so we're doing it every 2 weeks as opposed to every week. That one action alone has saved us, it will save us $40 million over the next 10 years. Right. So we're doing more, but we're doing it with less. We're also doing some work to restructure our debt. Our utilities just went through a refinancing of debt that's going to save $18 million over 10 years. So we're trying to find ways to get the same work done for less, and it's working. Well,
it's interesting. It's the same as private business as it is in public business. I like to often say creativity solves all problems, and just what you're talking about is creative ways to get the job done. Yeah, exactly. How about you, Mayor Roberts? Is it similar in Anderson?
Very similar to what these guys say, too, and probably, and they would agree with me, too, that we get more compliments from the public works part of our operations. They're the face. They're out on the streets every day. They're doing things and moving the ugly trash around and making sure things look good. And we had to get buy-in from our employees at that part of the team level, you know, because they have not gotten raises. They've seen us do other things with other fees that are dedicated sources like hospitality money and accommodations tax money, and we've got to let them know that, you know, we have to spend those dedicated revenue sources on other things, but we still need you to do what you're doing every day, and they've stepped up to the plate and they're doing a good job.
With constricting budgets, with demands up on municipal services, is there any thoughts or any increased talks of consolidation? I know it's often been a topic here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg County. It's been a topic in the Winston-Salem and in Anderson, too. What are your thoughts on, I'll start with you, Mayor, thoughts on consolidation of county and those city governments?
It makes sense, and maybe that's our debt ceiling issue when it comes to
Right.
the compromise there. But eventually it's got to lead to that, because from police, fire, you know, the things that make sense to consolidate with county government, from public works, and you know, the challenge there is, and I guess in that metropolitan form of government, other communities have gone through it, Jacksonville and Atlanta. It takes a long time, you know? And so my point to our folks and fellow politicians is that if we've got to start somewhere and make solid steps to get to that point, because at the end of the day, it might take 20 years to get there, but if we don't start somewhere, we'll never see those efficiencies of services.
Take some vision. How about you, Mayor Joyce?
It's interesting. I did my master's thesis on city-county consolidations.
All right.
And when I first came to Winston-Salem right out of grad school, Winston-Salem Forsyth County had appointed a commission to study that. I said, oh, that's going to be great. I can study that, add something to my thesis. The commission met once and disbanded. But so what we have done is to do a lot of functional consolidations, you know, our inspections divisions, libraries, tax collection, purchasing, et cetera. So a lot of that over the years in planning have brought us together. We're now at a juncture, most of these consolidations, Jacksonville, Duval County and others, really reached, there were some crises within the city government or county government that led that. In Jacksonville's case, it was the school system accreditation brought them together. So it can happen. Our good friend Jerry Abrams out in Louisville has just led an effort to consolidate those governments. But right now, because of some of the liberal, I guess, not consolidation, but incorporation policies, in Forsyth County, we have about 7 incorporated areas within the county government. So that creates an obstacle to bringing together a true municipal government. So I think we'll probably continue with just functional consolidation for a while.
Right. Mayor Fox?
Look, I think Charlotte has had a great history in Mecklenburg County of functional consolidation. We have more than 20 departments that have functionally consolidated over the last 25 years. But I do think full political consolidation is the ultimate solution to some of our challenges. The very fact that we had libraries closing or threatened to close 2 years ago, and municipalities stepped up to fill in the breach to allow the library system to methodically work through a transition plan, it saved 16 libraries. But we don't have a methodical way of setting community priorities at one table, and I think that's one of the real advantages of full political consolidation. So I'm hoping to take another whack at that over the next couple of years.
That's great.
Yeah.
One of the big success stories, at least in our region, was landing the Democratic National Convention. That will be here in September 2012, and I know you played a part in that, so thank you for everything and all the efforts that everybody did to bring that here. How do you see that changing and affecting our region?
I think it will dramatically change and affect our region in the following way. We have never had an opportunity as good as this one to put the region on international display, to talk about the state to talk about the greater region around us and the Piedmont, to talk about Charlotte specifically, because I think there's a lot of mystery surrounding what we're about. You know, people know banks, but they don't necessarily know the personality of this region. I think it's a huge opportunity to sell this region, not just on the mechanics of how we do business, but also on why people choose to live here. So, you know, if you took the 15,000 national and international media that will descend on our area for 2 or 3 weeks in September of next year and calculated the value of that earned media, it's probably in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think that kind of exposure is going to help us well into the future.
It's a great marketing opportunity
huge.
for the region.
It's huge. I think it's bigger than the immediate economic impact, which will be about $150 to $200 million. I think the bigger impact is CEOs who come here for the convention and say, gosh, what a great place to be. Maybe I should have an outpost here. Maybe I should move my headquarters here. Those are the kinds of opportunities we're hoping to get.
That's great. That's great. How about for your two cities? Are you seeing any overspill of opportunity with the convention?
We certainly hope so. Mayor Fox has been very generous in his time and chatting with us about ways that we can tie in, and I think there will be some spillover at Winston-Salem. We're only an hour and a half or so away, and we hope to have an opportunity to showcase some of the things we've got going, and it may even have to have folks staying up this way. I don't know, but so I think there will be some collateral impact, positive impact.
That's great. Mayor Roberts?
I think the same thing, you know, from the upstate of South Carolina to the Midlands. We're hour and a half, Charlotte, Columbia, Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson. And so it's the region, and I think that's the key thing, you know. These CEOs, when they come in, they don't look at state lines and county lines. They're looking at a region. And so my whole idea is that if the region does well, if Charlotte does well, I mean, what a big hit to have that. And so if these guys do what they do, it helps us all, you know. And so I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
The process to get ready for the convention, how are we're on that way, we're on track to be ready for everybody. We got to be ready for all the people that arrive and the hotels and the taxi cab drivers and everything. It's a big effort. That's right, that's right. That's his job.
Call us when it's done.
Exactly. They can come visit when the convention happens. No, it's a big process, and there are federal agencies involved in it. There are state agencies as well as local and regional agencies, and we really do want this to be a total state and southeast region kind of convention. So you're going to see us pulling people from South Carolina and Virginia and all over North Carolina to make it a success.
That's great. We have a few more minutes left, and so the last topic I wanted to bring up is really a broader question, is civility in politics. Through the recent debt debate, we've seen a lot of intolerance for somebody else's position, sticking your feet in the ground, and we've also just seen a general over the time just a lack of respect for your partner or for disagreeing views. So I want your overall opinion. I'll start with you, Mayor Roberts. Where do you think, how has it gotten so bad, and how do we get better? And is it as bad as we think?
I think it is bad. I think there are a lot of egos sometimes get in the way. I'm the oldest son of a guy who did high school sports and 47 years, won 13 state championships, you know, State Hall of Fame, National Hall of Fame. And it's about teamwork. And it's also about, and these guys do a good job of that, it's about making sure that the people around you are better and not caring who gets the credit. And so I think a lot of times the civility goes out of it when egos come into play. You know, when you have, it's discouraging when you have someone on your team that's talented and they know they're talented and they're going to let everybody else know that they're talented. And so sometimes you have to scale that back and work within a teamwork frame.
That's great. Mayor Joines, I have about 30 seconds for your response.
U.S. Conference of Mayors feels like this is a big issue. The mayor of Tucson, I believe it was, that brought forth a resolution at our last conference I guess hundreds of our mayors have signed on this civility pledge we will work together in some more statesmanlike ways. So I think it's clearly on our agenda, and at the local level, I think we're moving forward on it.
That's great. Mayor Fox?
Well, you know, in cities and towns, we don't have time to fuss with each other over partisan differences. A pothole doesn't know a Republican or a Democrat. It's just a pothole, and that's part of the job that we have as mayors. I think the thing that really troubles me in Washington is that this is not a game. The economy is not a game. The fact that people are out of work is not a game. And I think many people, including myself, are very troubled that folks would use political posturing to take on something as serious as getting this country back to work.
It's a very serious business.
It
Very
is.
serious business. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our discussion. I wish we had a whole nother 30 minutes, but thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton, an international accounting, tax, and business advisory organization dedicated to serving middle market companies. Grant Thornton, a passion for the business of accounting. And by Novant HEALTH, a not-for-profit group of hospitals and physician clinics, ranked as one of our nation's 10 best healthcare systems, caring for patients and communities in North and South Carolina. Major funding also by King & Spalding, an international law firm with over 800 lawyers in 13 offices worldwide, providing legal services to clients in the Carolinas and throughout the world. For more information, visit www.kslaw.com. Additional funding provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. There's a place for those who subscribe to the theory that business doesn't have to be boring. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries, headquartered in Hartsville since 1899. And by viewers like you. Thank you. You may write us at Carolina Business Review, 3242 Commonwealth Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28205.